Now, I get a lot of questions about what sort of guitar I'm playing, what pedals I'm using, how I'm getting my overdriven tones when I'm playing lead, and just general setup questions all through my comments, through my Instagram DMs, all the time. So I thought, what better time than to do a bit of a rig rundown than January 2022. Can have a look at what I'm using at the moment, my little setup, how I work it all, and then 2023 might do another one and see if it's changed at all. So hang around and we'll go through some of the gear that I've been using and what I like about it, what I don't like about it, things I'm thinking about changing. Yeah, so stick around. So first of all, I like to go through a couple of the guitars that I use throughout my videos, through my live performances, basically anytime I'm playing guitar at home. And this is a guitar that you would have seen me use a lot on my videos, and this is my trusty old Cole Clark FL2 AC. I bought this back in 2013 and this has been my main guitar ever since. There's something about Cole Clark guitars that I can't really explain. They're phenomenal to play, and they're built for live performers. They're built to be used on the road, kicked around, and just abused, basically. That's what they're designed for, and they just got this tone, this big fat tone, hence the FL standing for fat lady. They're just these dreadnought guitars that just have this huge balls about them. And I've played a lot of guitars in my time, and this thing is by far my favourite guitar that I've ever picked up. And just a bit about it, I guess. I mean, it's got a Spanish heel, which is something that I find pretty fancy, but definitely adds to the tone. It's got a spruce top, Queensland maple neck, rosewood fingerboard, Grover tuners, rosewood bridge. But what really sets this thing apart from other acoustic guitars, especially for live performance, is the pickup system that they put in these Cole Clarks. It's a three-way system, so you've got your normal under-saddle bridge like most Fishmans or other sort of guitars that you buy, acoustic guitars, but you've also got these face sensor pickups as well under the face, which give it an interesting sound, especially if you're percussive with your rhythm playing. And then thirdly, it has a little microphone in there as well, so just to pick up that natural sound. So you blend those three together using the knobs on top, and you just end up with this this warm yet aggressive kind of acoustic sound. So you get the aggressiveness from the undersaddle bridge, but you get the warmth from the mic as well. And yeah, second to none. These things are worth every single penny, and luckily enough, this one was made in the original factory. So the original Cole Clark factory burnt down in 2013, I believe. And I was lucky enough to buy this one, which was built in 2012. So this one came out of the original factory, and yeah, if you can find somewhere that supplies Cole Clarks near where you live, I would definitely recommend trying them out, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. So, but yeah, that's my trusty FL2 Cole Clark guitar that you see me play in pretty much all of my videos. And then next we have this 12-string. This is also a Cole Clark, but a fair bit older than my other one. This one I picked up secondhand. And I believe this one was made in 2006, just going off the serial number. But this plays beautifully, especially for the age, and it just feels solid. Like, it's a beautiful guitar, and I'm really happy that I got my hands on it. And this one's got Queensland maple back and sides and Queensland maple neck, rosewood fingerboard, rosewood bridge. Now this one has the original Cole Clark pickup system, which is exactly the same as the other one, except it doesn't have the microphone. So it's got your undersaddle pickup and your face sense pickups, but still an outstanding sounding guitar. And my first 12 string that I've bought, to be honest, I had mucked around on 12 strings before, and I thoroughly enjoyed them, but I'd never actually bought one until I bought this one. I'd seen a lot of 12 strings around from other brands, but I knew that Cole Clark made 12 string guitars, so I kept waiting until this one came up, and I got it for a steal from a guitar store up in Queensland, and yeah, the rest is history. And I play this live, so I take, for gigs, I'll use this, and I'll use my FL2, and I'll take them both. They're my two guitars for live playing, and you would have seen me do a fair few songs with this one on my videos as well. So songs like Purple Rain, White Room's another one that I use it on, and yeah, you've heard what it sounds like, and it sounds beautiful. So they're my two main guitars that I use. Now, you would have seen a couple of other videos where I use some different guitars, and I'm just gonna pull out one of those, and it is very close to my heart, very dear to my heart, this guitar, and probably it would definitely be my favorite electric guitar that I own. And I'm very fortunate to own such a beautiful instrument, and that is this is my Gretsch 6120 Chet Atkins model. I picked this up in 2014, I believe. This is a 2009 model. I got it secondhand, and what makes this guitar so special for me is that growing up, there were two types of guitars that I wanted to own. One of them was a 1959 Gibson Les Paul in Cherry Burst, which if you're a guitar player, you'll know I will never ever own one. And the other one was a Gretsch 6120. So I'm not a young man, and I got this guitar in my late 20s. And yeah, when I got it, it was just a very special day for me, and it's just something that I've always wanted to own. And when I finally got to own one, and I saved up all that money, and I went in and bought this, it's probably one of the best musical days of my life. And the thing just sounds incredible. I can't even explain how it feels to play. I'm a big fan of wide necks, and of course this has got the wide neck because it's a 6120. The sound of this thing is just phenomenal, especially when you're playing through a Fender amp. It's just nice cleans. It handles the overdrive really well if you want to throw a bit of gain in there. Yeah, and it's an absolute pleasure to play. So yeah, I've used this on Georgia on My Mind, Trouble in Mind, and Rambling on My Mind. A lot of minds in there. So, but yeah, that's my wonderful Gretsch 6120. So let's move on. Let's start talking about amps. So besides the guitars that I use, one thing that I feel helps me with my sound, I guess, is using amps mixed with PA and direct input. So I get a lot of comments, especially on that All Along the Watchtower video, saying that I'm using tube screamers or overdrive pedals or plugins that I've put in afterwards to get that lead sound, and that is 110% not true. The truth is I get that overdriven sound simply through this, and this is a Marshall 50 watt Plexi 1987 reissue. So the 50 watt head, not the super lead. I've owned this for years and years and years, again, because I am a big Jimmy Page fan and a big Jimi Hendrix fan, to name a few. And although they played 100 watts, I live in Australia and sometimes those 100 watts are extremely hard to get your hands on. And I saw this come up for sale, so I jumped on it straight away. But that's it. The overdrive sound comes from me really working these tubes. So the 50 watt head, and underneath we have a 4x12 cab. My volumes, I've got I do the blending of the volumes with a small patch lead, and my volumes sit around 8 to 10, dependent on how much growl I want. Obviously 8 to 10 coming through a 4x12 cab is extremely loud, and for stadium playing and not studio playing. So I do run an attenuator for this. It's called a Rocktron, and it's quite old, but it does the job, and it allows me to really pump these tubes and get them as hot as I need to whilst maintaining my eardrums, because anyone who's played a Marshall through a 4x12 knows exactly how loud these things are. But yeah, no pedals. My overdrive sound is purely amp. But in saying that, I do add on a little bit of room reverb in post-production, which goes on all of my tracks, vocal, guitar, everything. So it's just a little bit of room reverb to make it not sound so stale. But yeah, that's the amp that I use in the studio. Live, obviously this thing is way too big and bulky to be carrying around as a solo guitarist and solo artist. I wouldn't be wheeling this into a gig, purely just for the size of it. So in order to get my sort of live tone with the overdrive and stuff like that, I have a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe Mark 1 that I use the overdrive channel on that amp and mic it up, and that's how I get it live. But yeah, that's my amps, and the two that I run. This is the one that you guys would have heard. I don't think I've recorded any YouTube videos using my Fender, apart from Red House, which was just me mucking around, and that's just a Fender Strat through the Fender Hot Rod. Nice clean sound. I'm pretty sure that's the only time I've used the Fender. So yeah, we'll move on to the pedals. So I guess the last piece of the puzzle is pedals, and pedal board, and what's on your pedal board, what are you using for your reverbs, for your delays, your overdrives, everything like that. And that's always a question that I find guitarists ask. They go, what guitar do you play? What amp are you running? What's on your pedal board? And to be honest with you, I don't think I have enough pedals to justify calling it a pedal board. I'm going to go through what I use. The first one is this, and this is the Bigfoot Little Monster, and it is a Stompbox. So it's not actually a pedal per se. It's just it's a Stompbox. So when you hear that bass drum sound, that's this little guy here, just 1/4-inch jack, straight into a DI, and that's it. And that's gives me that bass drum sound. I've had this Bigfoot for a very, very long time, long enough for the company not to be called Bigfoot anymore. They're called Wild Dog Stompboxes now, and I've had a fair few Stompboxes from different companies and different brands. These are by far the best I've ever used, and just the length of time that I've had this, the amount of times I've kicked this for it still to be going. And if you've ever seen me play live, you know that I kick these things pretty hard. So yeah, if you want a good quality thing that's going to last you, spend the money. Wild Dog Stomps, highly recommend them. I've got 2 of these. My other one's the same, bit bigger with a cymbal in it. But this Little Monster or similar would be definitely the best thing that I've ever invested in, as far as Stompboxes go. So moving on from the Stompbox, we'll get into some actual pedals. So I use the Boss RC500 to loop. Last year, at the end of last year, I was using the RC30, but I upgraded to the RC500 just because I'd owned the RC30 for probably 10 years. The battery terminals were knackered, so I couldn't take batteries. It always had to be plugged in, and it was time for an upgrade. It was old and beaten up. So the RC500 is very similar. It does a few extra things, but as far as setup, exactly the same as the RC30. Does have MIDI, which I don't personally use, but if you're thinking of doing looping using Ableton on a laptop whilst you play or things like that, this has the MIDI capabilities to do that. And this also has the capability to run 2, and you can run one as a master, one as a slave, to give you more outputs. I do have a video on my channel about how to set this thing up, how I set this up in order to get different channels, so that when I go in for mixing and post-production, I can do each track separately and make sure that they're EQ'd properly, volume levels are done properly, all that kind of thing. So I do have a video on that. If you would like me to elaborate a bit more on it, or that video is a little bit vague, or anything like that, just hit me up in the comments. Be more than happy to help. I have had emails from people asking a bit more about the setup and that, and I'm always happy to help. So yeah, if you want to know more, just let me know. So that was pedal number 2. Well, we'll call that pedal number 2. And pedal number 3, the last one that I use, is this Cool Switch Pro. And all this is a switcher, an ABY switcher. So what I use for this is I run my guitar into the input. I have one output going to my loop pedal and the other output going to the Marshall. And what it just allows me to do is to flick over from the looping track, or that clean guitar sound, to my lead guitar sound, which is done through the Marshall, as I discussed earlier. And that's it. That's all I use this for. Occasionally you'll hear the clicks in the videos, or in the tracks that I put out on Spotify and things like that, and that's just because I record everything live, and that's part of the live experience. So I tend to leave all that stuff in. So yeah, if you hear a little click before I go to the lead sound, it's just this. That's it. And they're my pedals. That's all I use. So yeah, that's my entire setup currently in January 2022. and that is my setup for live performance, and the YouTube setup. The only difference, as I said earlier, is what amp I choose when I play live as to when I do my YouTube videos. So very, very, very simple setup. It's very basic. You don't need complicated setups. I'm not a fan of complicated setups. A, because they're complicated. B, they take a long time to set up. And C, half the time you don't use the stuff that you've got in your complicated setup. So what I've learned over the years is less is more, I guess. I mean, I remember playing in bands and stuff, and I had a pedal board, and I think I had about 8 or 9 pedals on that pedal board. I reckon I used 2 of those pedals every gig, and one would have been a fuzz. So you're already running your tubes hard, the fuzz just gives it a bit more, get up and go. And the other one would have been a wah pedal. The rest of the pedals never even got touched, but for some reason having a big complicated pedal board is just what people do. So if you're playing acoustic, even if you're playing electric setups, use as little gear as you can, because you're going to save yourself time, you're going to save yourself money, and you're going to save yourself headaches when things don't work. Because chasing leads when you're trying to set up for a gig, it's not fun. So yeah, keep it simple. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully that was an interesting enough video, and hopefully some of the gear you're interested in. And if you want to know more, as I said before, just hit me up. I'm more than happy. Got the website down in the description there with contact details and stuff. So if you want to send me an email or leave me a comment or anything like that, yeah. And we'll see how much it changes in 2023. And I dare say it probably will change. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.